First of all, subscribe to the channel. Here you have access to information that is usually kept under wraps. And what you are about to hear could completely change the way you see the world around you. In recent days, a video has started gaining traction on the internet. Its content retrieved from one of the most important forums on international security, the Aspen Security Forum. For years, this event has brought together powerful figures, former CIA directors, CEOs of tech giants, defense secretaries, cyber warfare experts. But no one expected that in 2022, a segment of a speech would cause so much discomfort and raise a chilling suspicion. In the video, a US congressman reveals something that sounds more like science fiction than reality. He claims, in front of the highest authorities in the field, that there are already military tools capable of identifying and targeting specific individuals based on their genetic code. If this is true, humanity has entered a new era of warfare, and most people still haven't realized it. His name is Jason Crow, a US congressman, a member of the Armed Services Committee, and also of the Permanent Intelligence Committee of the House. In other words, someone who knows exactly what is happening behind the scenes of power. During the Aspen Security Forum in 2022, he made a statement that went unnoticed by the mainstream media. But now, 2 years later, it is gaining traction and leaving experts on high alert. According to Jason Crow, biological weapons are already being developed with a specific and dark purpose to target a single person. It's no longer about weapons for mass destruction. We're talking about invisible tools created to eliminate individuals based on extremely sensitive information, DNA. His words were direct. Today, it is already possible to use an individual's genetic profile combined with their medical history to develop a biological artifact that targets only that person, no one else. I repeat, no one else. A silent weapon, no gunfire, no explosions, no traces, just the chosen target and the gradual disappearance of their health. For the first time, warfare is no longer a matter of armies. It becomes a war against the identity of every human being. But where would this DNA come from? How would such intimate information be reaching the hands of those designing these new silent weapons? The answer is disturbing and much closer than most imagine. In recent years, millions of people around the world have voluntarily begun to send their genetic information to private companies. The most famous of these, 23andMe, a giant in the industry, specializing in genetic testing for ancestry and personalized health. The promise was tempting: to understand one's own origins, discover hereditary diseases, adjust diet based on biological predispositions, all with a simple saliva tube. And thus, without realizing it, a multitude began to hand over the most intimate code a human being possesses to corporations. The problem? This data began to be stored in vast genetic databases. And more than that, they became the property of private companies, subject to commercial interests, silent agreements, and even legal loopholes that no one read in the fine print. Jason Crow went even further in his remarks. He stated that once a company holds your DNA, you lose control over your own body in legal terms. According to him, there is currently no clear legislation in the United States protecting this data from being sold, shared, or used for obscure purposes. And it is here that the pieces begin to fall into place. 23andMe was for a long time seen as a revolutionary innovation, but everything started to crumble in October 2023. Hackers breached the company's servers and leaked genetic information from over 6 million people. Names, locations, family histories, genetic groups, mitochondrial data, ancestry patterns, everything was exposed. The majority of the victims? People linked to two very specific regions, the Middle East and East Asia. Coincidence? Or something bigger, carefully planned? Within weeks, the company's reputation plummeted. Trust disappeared. And what was once a billion-dollar genetic data empire became a target of global scandal. On March 24, 2025, the news that many had been expecting was finally confirmed. 23andMe declared bankruptcy. The official reason? Loss of trust, decline in demand, and the consequences of the data leak. But the question that frightens the most is not why the company went bankrupt. The real question is, where did the genetic data of millions of people go? These files did not vanish. They are worth gold, or perhaps something even more valuable. And there are increasing signs that information is being discreetly acquired by groups linked to biotechnology, defense, and the strategic interests of rival nations. Who controls the data, controls the target. Shortly after the collapse of 23andMe, discrete movements emerged in the biotechnology market. Companies with murky ties, many registered outside the Western axis, began to show interest in entire genetic banks. According to investigative journalism reports, groups linked to the Beijing government would be among the silent buyers of this data. These organizations have a history of joint operations with large technology and defense conglomerates. One of them is BGI Group, considered the largest genomics company on the planet. Officially, it operates in the health field. But US intelligence reports warn the real objective may be the development of precision biomilitary technologies. This hypothesis gains strength when we remember that, back in 2021, the program 60 Minutes revealed that BGI offered for free testing kits to various nations during the global health crisis. What seemed like humanitarian aid now raises a delicate question. Were these kits a smokescreen for the mass collection of genetic material? With access to the DNA of millions of citizens from different countries, a government or organization could, in theory, build a database capable of identifying biological weaknesses, genetic predispositions, and immunological patterns of entire populations. The war of the future will not be won by tanks. It will be won by lines of genetic code, and the scariest part is realizing that this silent war has already begun. For decades, we have been taught to imagine war as something visible, soldiers marching, explosions from a distance, but that is now in the past. Today, the most dangerous wars are not fought with bullets, but with data. We are living the peak of what strategists call fifth-generation warfare, a type of silent conflict where destruction does not happen on battlefields, but within the body and mind of each individual. In this new era, society as a whole is a field of operations. The food you consume, the medications you take, the way you think, react, and even how you sleep. All of this can be manipulated. And your genetic code is the access password. Imagine a technology capable of identifying a specific weakness in your organism and activating it from a distance, a biological trigger, an internal collapse. This is not science fiction. It is the type of project that is already being openly discussed among defense, technology, and intelligence experts. The difference is that now the target is no longer the soldier. It is you, the ordinary citizen, the consumer, the number in a database. The unwitting bearer of a code that can be exploited, manipulated, or even eliminated without your knowledge. The weapon of the future will not be seen, will not be heard, but will be active, silent, and lethal. 3 names. 3 men with enough power to shape the present and redesign the future. Elon Musk, the visionary billionaire, the man behind Neuralink, a company that promises to connect the human brain to artificial intelligence. Recently, he announced that all his children, except one, were born through in vitro fertilization. Coincidence? or part of a new generation created with specific genetic parameters. Now, under the project called Stargate, Musk promises to accelerate the integration between the human body and neural control systems. The declared objective: to transform the United States into the leading power in artificial intelligence by 2029. But what might be hidden behind this plan? Bill Gates, the most controversial philanthropist of the century. He has publicly spoken about the need to reduce global carbon emissions, even citing the world population as one of the critical factors in the equation. At another time, he suggested that modified mosquitoes could be used to contain pandemics. Mosquitoes with genetic modifications. And then there is him, Anthony Fauci, the doctor who has remained at the top of the US health system for nearly 5 decades. In 2021, his name was already a symbol of authority. But few knew that he was also at the center of controversies long before the global health crisis. In the 1980s, Fauci faced harsh criticism for how he dealt with a silent plague affecting specific population groups. And according to the book, The Real Anthony Fauci, written by Robert Kennedy Jr., he allegedly used orphan children as guinea pigs in highly questionable tests without proper authorization. Today, this same man is cited as the architect of gain-of-function projects, research aimed at making viruses more potent under the justification of anticipating future crises. These 3 names together represent the link between technology, medicine, and political power. They are not just influencing decisions, they are rewriting the rules of human existence. And if DNA is the key, they are the ones holding the door. Some stories only make sense when told with decades of distance, and sometimes what seemed like a mistake begins to reveal itself as part of a larger plan. In the 1980s, the world was shaken by a silent plague, a disease that spread mysteriously, primarily affecting specific groups within the population. At the time, many believed it was a natural phenomenon. Others, more observant, raised uncomfortable hypotheses. What if it had been manufactured to target precisely those groups? Among the names involved in managing this crisis, one stands out to this day: Anthony Fauci. Nearly 40 years later, amid a new global crisis, he re-emerges, more powerful, more shielded, and again, at the center of the storm. The new health crisis seemed different, but the side effects told a strangely familiar story. Once again, specific groups were the most affected. Populations with certain genetic backgrounds began to show higher rates of complications. The National Institutes of Health published studies showing that certain genetic lineages were among the most vulnerable. But the official explanation was simple: social inequality, lack of access to health care, poor nutrition. However, for some experts, this was not enough. The pattern was genetic, not economic. And if it was genetic, someone already knew about it. The similarity between the two events starts to disturb. Both appeared suddenly, both targeted very specific victims, and both had the same man as the protagonist. Coincidence? Or are we facing a carefully calibrated engineering capable of testing the behavior of entire populations in real time? This question still echoes in closed rooms, but for those who observe closely, the answer is already starting to emerge between the lines. Up to this point, everything seems like a big puzzle: disconnected pieces, isolated facts, scattered names. But when you fit each part together, a clear image emerges, disturbing and extremely real. The true battlefield is not the territory, it is the human body. More than that, it is the very definition of humanity. What is underway is a silent process of biological re-engineering on a global scale, not to heal, not to protect, but to transform the human being into something predictable, trackable, and moldable. With the mastery of genetic data, technocratic elites gain access to your past, and your future, the food you should consume, the medication you need to take, the emotions you should feel, and now the very composition of your body. With projects like Stargate, the line between man and machine is being erased. The idea of improving the species through genetic editing is no longer fiction. It is a guideline for some of the largest companies on the planet. Neuralink, CRISPR, and other pioneering initiatives promise a new era for humanity. But none of these promises answer the most important question: who owns the human body when it is artificially modified? The answer is clear. To whom holds the codes? To whom possesses the keys? To whom collects, stores, and decodes your DNA? The body ceases to be a temple and becomes a device, connected, monitored, updatable. The war of the future will not be fought with weapons. It will be won with patents. The ultimate goal is not the control of nations. It is the control of being, of essence, of what you are, and what you can become. If all of this is true, if these pieces really belong to a single board, then we are no longer living in common times. We are inside a plan, subtle, strategic, and meticulously calculated. A plan that does not present itself with tanks in the streets, but with soft words, scientific advances, and promises of health and convenience. They do not just want to know you, they want to rewrite you. And in the meantime, millions continue to hand over their genetic identity in search of answers, not realizing that they may be feeding the very system that will turn them into targets, or tools, or both. History shows that the greatest changes do not come with sirens. They come with silence, with consent disguised as choice, with speeches of progress and phrases like, "It's for your own good." But perhaps it is not too late. There are still those who observe, those who question, those who do not accept that the human essence be reduced to lines of code and sellable data. Information today is resistance, and every time you share, comment, or simply stay aware, you weaken the machinery. The true war has already begun. And the first battlefield is your consciousness. If this content made sense to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every week, new pieces will be revealed, because in this world where almost everything is manipulated, knowing the truth has become the greatest act of courage.